Hey, what's up guys, TechTime here, and this is the 2025 Moto G. And basically I've been using this phone for 48 hours. Here's what I can come up with so far. Same great design from last year, slightly upgraded camera, slightly better performance, same large battery, faster charging speed, 120 Hz refresh rate that we got from last year, and the same 720p display from last year. Let's have a conversation. So before I begin this one, I just want to take a second and thank you all so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and also leave a thumbs up. A lot of great content is coming really soon. So with that being said, one of the first things that I want to speak on when it comes to the 2025 Moto G 5G is this design, which is basically the same design from the previous generation with slight tweaks here and there. So basically the same vegan leather material that they used last year. It still feels good in the hand. It's a very solid built phone that gives you sort of a premium look and feel without the premium cost. So this phone does start at $199, which in my opinion is slightly overpriced, but I'll explain that later. But basically, texture wise, it feels really good. This kind of vegan leather material is really, it catches dust really quickly and it's really difficult to clean. But overall though, not too bad. Still thinks it's way better than this glossy plastic that Samsung is using. Material. The bottom ports, you get your headphone jack, your USB-C that is capable of 30 watts of wired charging, your loudspeaker which sounds really good, as well as the microphone. On the right hand side you also get your power button / volume up and down, and the power button is fairly tactile. Funny enough, it's actually more tactile than your volume up and down, and it does double as your fingerprint sensor. But the sides itself are made out of plastic, the buttons themselves are made out of plastic, so costs have to be kept down because at the end of the day it is a $199 phone. In addition to that, Motorola did say that this phone is water repellent. Not water resistant, not waterproof, so be very careful. It will handle subtle splashes, but nothing too crazy, so be careful with that. I put it out in the rain. It was fine. I don't think it would damage it at all. But then again, like I said, I would not go on a swim with this phone or any phone that is not fully waterproof in that case. That's basically the story behind the design. Very similar tactics from the previous generation. It is a slightly larger device though, which is a great way to transition to the next topic of conversation, which is this controversial display. So again, Motorola gave us a slightly larger display at 6.7 inches versus the 6.6 inches from the previous generation. However, you do get a 720p panel, so it's 1604 by 720p, 263 pixels per inch, 84% screen to body ratio. It is an IPS LCD panel and a high 120 Hz refresh rate. There are a couple of problems that I have with this phone. Well, it's not a couple of problems, it's one problem. It's this stupid resolution. Why is it only 720p? It just doesn't make sense, right? And I know I'm going here on a rant, but come on. So this is supposed to be the phone that's competing with the Samsung Galaxy A16 that has a OLED display, 1080p, 90 Hz. I would have sacrificed the higher refresh rate, the slightly larger display, for basically just a 1080p IPS panel. I would have been happy with that. $199 IPS panel, vegan leather material, great design, but no. Why should we do that? Let's just keep it at 720p. I get that from a Motorola perspective, it's another way to kind of keep the cost down, and maybe the average consumer would not really care, but why would you put 120 Hz refresh rate if you know that the average consumer is not even going to care about that and give us a lower resolution? It just doesn't make sense, right? And it almost kind of ruins the phone for me, but I've lived with it. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. However, it just sucks. I feel like a company just like Motorola should have been able to pull off a 1080p display. The speaker on the hand is really fantastic. It's noticeably better than the previous generation, so go ahead and take a listen to it. And of course you have your volume up and down. And so the back also houses your quad camera setup and your dual LED flash, which we will definitely talk about later on. But essentially that's the big story behind the design. So now I'm really curious to hear you guys' thoughts about this kind of a disappointing display. But let's now transition to the camera department. Well, here's the camera specs. Basically, you get a 50 megapixel main sensor at f1.8 aperture. Your second camera is a 2 megapixel macro sensor, and you do have a third camera this year around, but don't get too excited. It's literally just an ambient light sensor. The funny thing is that you can shoot 1080p videos on this phone. However, you can only view it back at 720p thanks to that resolution. I am currently working on a full dedicated camera review, so be on the lookout for that. But basically, from my 48-hour testing, I found that this camera is ever so slightly better than the previous generation. The quality of the pictures are fine. They're not the greatest that you'll ever see, but it does a better job than the previous generation in collecting more light, collecting more data to give you an overall better picture. But then again, like I said, it's nothing to kind of write home about. It's not going to be the craziest or best camera in the world. I don't expect that. You shouldn't expect that from a $200 phone. So right now I want to switch this conversation to the performance of this device. And here is your kind of technical specs. From out the box, you get a MediaTek Dimensity 6300 processor, and it is an octa-core processor. You also get the Mali G57 MC2 for your GPU. You also have 4 gigabytes of RAM that is upgradable to 12 gigabytes using RAM Boost with your 128 gigabyte storage. So it will basically take some of that storage and apply it to the RAM. You get the same 5000 milliamp hour battery, which you will get great battery life out of this phone, and a faster charging speed at 30 watts. No wireless charging. Don't expect that with this phone, and it's fine. But from my experience opening up apps and basically the everyday tasks are, I want to say that they're not really that fast. They're actually slightly slow, especially when opening up the camera app. But your just main apps themselves, like your phone app, your messaging, it's gonna take a second to open up. It's not gonna be super fast. It's as decent of performance as you will get from a phone at this price point and phone at this kind of specs. Your synthetic benchmark scores are the following. So you get a 796 on the single core, 2116 on the multi-core. Funny enough, the single core was actually slightly higher on the 24 Moto G, and the multi-core is slightly higher on the 25 Moto G. So I guess kind of a back and forth in that regard. If you're asking about gaming, I would say that light to medium titles on this phone are fine. I tested out a couple of games, but basically my experience has been very similar. On lighter titles, it works fairly well. It wasn't, I don't want to say it was like the greatest, the highest refresh rate experience, or it was super smooth. It worked, right? On lighter titles, it's gonna work. On heavier titles, you're gonna have a problem. Did it get warm? Did it get hot? It got warm, but not uncomfortably hot, and the battery life on here is fantastic. Giving the kind of larger footprint of the phone makes the experience for gamers slightly better. But then again, you still get a low resolution display, so gamers are not going to be happy. But yeah, so here is my bottom line conclusion for this phone. As someone that used it for 2 days consistently, I can say this: if you can get past that 720p display, then this is not too bad of a phone. The design really good, the cameras fair. The gaming experience, the performance, just what I would expect. Multitasking on this phone is actually really decent. But yeah, the reason I said it's overpriced in the beginning of my video is because at $199, there are better options. The Galaxy A16 is automatically a better option than this just because it provides a better resolution. The camera on the A16 is slightly better. If you guys want to see that comparison between the Moto G and the Galaxy A16, let me know in the comments below. I'll make it happen. And so I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts about the 2025 Moto G. Is it worth it? Is it kind of a lazy phone that Motorola just decided to come up with just so that they say they have a 25 version? But with that being said, just leave your suggestions and your comments below. Let's have a conversation about this phone, and I will definitely catch you guys in the next one. Thank you all for watching.